Okay, we'll start. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another wonderful edition of HLF Online. And this evening, we are delighted to have two stars, a star who is a writer and a star who is a film actor. And we are privileged to have Mr. Kabir Bedi with us this evening. And speaking to him is Kishwar Desai. And just a quick introduction to the book that we are going to talk about. You can see the cover behind Kabir's image, the beautiful cover of the book. This is the book titled Stories I Must Tell, the emotional life of an actor. And a remarkably candid, frank account of Kabir Bedi, the actor, as well as the man. So it covers both his personal as well as his professional life, the ups and downs of his life, the people in his life. And the bonus, as far as I'm concerned, was also the chapter on his parents. What a remarkable life they had. And in 7 chapters and an additional chapter full of beautiful pictures from Kabir's career, the book covers his life from from Delhi to Bombay to Hollywood to Italy to back to Bombay. And so it's a roller coaster ride of a journey of life and the kind of people he met. And what is also remarkable in the book is that he doesn't hide anything. He talks about both his strengths as well as his weaknesses, his failures, and his remarkable successes. So it's a wonderful book, and what really is amazing is the candidness with which the book is written. He bears his soul, he bears his heart in the book, and I'm sure our readers, our audience would love to get a copy. Unfortunately, we can't get Mr. Kabir Bedi to autograph the books at the moment. Unfortunately, everything has to be online. So, and ladies and gentlemen, many of you would recall that Kishwar Desai was with us at the annual festival in January with her remarkable book on Devika Rani, The Longest Kiss. And Kishwar Desai also, of course, is known for her her biography of Sunil Dutt and Nargis, Darling Ji. And so who better than Kishwar to speak to Kabir Bedi, the star and the actor. So ladies and gentlemen, without much further ado, let me hand over the session to Kishwar Desai and Kabir Bedi. Thank you both for agreeing to do this session for us, and we are really looking forward to it. Thank you very much. And just a quick reminder to Kishwar that I'll be back on the screen after about 45 minutes or so. That means that we will start the audience questions in the last 10 to 15 minutes. So thank you on my own behalf and on behalf of my co-directors at HLF and our audience. Thank you once again, both Kabir Bedi and Kishwar Desai, for this evening, spending this evening with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Vijay. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as always, lovely to be back at HLF. And this time I'm playing the role of an interviewer, which I am absolutely so looking forward to, because we have this wonderful book written by an amazing man, Kabir Bedi, whom most of us have admired for many, many years, both as an actor and now as a writer, because I never realized, Kabir, that you had this book in you. And therefore, I think the first question we demand an answer to is, why did it take you so long? Why didn't you write this book earlier? Because there are so many stories in it, so much that we could have been reading about even earlier, because I'm sure it will require a sequel. So what made you write it now? And why did it take so long for you to come to it?
Ishwar, this was a book that was sort of in its parts whirling inside me. This story, that story, this idea, that theme, this journey, that journey, this achievement, that failure. I couldn't figure out how to write it. I just wasn't sure of the form. And I started thinking about it in the last 10 years quite seriously. And I actually made a number of attempts. I'd reach about 30, 40 pages and I'd stop and say, nobody but the most diehard fan would be interested in this. I just cannot continue like this. I wouldn't read it, you know. So they ended up in the waste paper basket. And then about a year and a half ago, I had this epiphany of how I could tell this through a series of stories of the people and places that I've loved, and tell it through the prism of those stories, which got me away from the need to be linear. Each story could be complete in itself, each story could overlap in time, but each chapter is a story complete in itself. And yet taken together, they form the sum total of my life. So once I was clear, I then wrote with passion, because it was like an unborn baby pushing with its legs to come out. You know, I was unable to hold it back anymore. I wrote with it. I'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, make myself 2 cups of tea, and start writing, and write furiously till about 9:30, 10 when I had my breakfast. Then I'd keep writing. Then everything else was in the evening. All the virtual appearances, the emails, the messages, the voiceover recordings, all those things I just kept for the evening. And I wrote solidly for 8 to 10 hours a day. And it took me 6 months to hammer out that first draft. Then I had to go back and recheck certain facts and certain dates and polish, etc. It took me 9 months to have this novel complete, this autobiography complete. But it was something that I wanted to do for a long time. And once I saw the way, I went at it like a maniac. And I'm glad I did, because it got the book done. And it got me a wonderful publisher in Westland. And now it's in the bookstores and on Amazon for everyone to buy, and Flipkart for that matter.
Wonderful. Well, we are very glad for the pandemic, because that's probably what made you sit down and write this book, because it gave you plenty of time, I'm sure, to sit and think about the really adventurous life that you have led. Apart from that, I do also want to point out to those listeners who may not know, viewers who may not know, is that you have been a writer. You have been writing short stories even in the past. And I think maybe this kind of a format, having worked in television, you probably were thinking like episodes, So that's exactly what I was thinking when I was going through this book. I said, it's like an episode, each episode is complete within itself. So I can see that there can be a wonderful television serial in there one day. Did you think of it like that?
No, I didn't think of it like that. I just knew that I had to write the story in a way that was true to me. It had to be authentic. It had to be structured as a short story form. And I know if it ever goes to television, which I hope it will, they'll have to restructure it in certain ways to get a certain linearity to it. They may not be able to do it in the form that I've written. But the stories are all that, and there are masters who can do that. I just didn't have the skills to keep people riveted to my story for the length of a book. I didn't know how to do that. I could do that in a short story, but I couldn't do it over the length of it. And I'm sure there are great screenplay writers who can extrapolate from what I've written and create, hopefully, a very fascinating story
whatever you
of
did,
life.
Yes.
Our life across continents, with all its triumphs and tragedies, mistakes and milestones, all that.
Absolutely. Sorry, I interrupted a little because the audio was going, so I couldn't hear you very clearly, but now it's back. And what I wanted to ask you is, I think for all of us, your parents have been very great influences on you right from the beginning. And as has already been mentioned, they led fascinating, mystical lives almost towards the end, particularly. You also are a descendant of Guru Nanak. From the same lineage. So this spirituality, was it always there in your life? And can you just tell us a little bit about your parents? Because it is an amazing family that you come from, which very few people know about.
I'm really blessed to have had such extraordinary parents, because this is the story of an Indian man and an English girl, both in Oxford on scholarships, both committed to the ideals of the time, the upliftment of the poor, opposing colonialism, and came back to India, where they could have got the best jobs in the country with their qualifications, and yet chose to give it all up for the cause of India's independence. They were idealists. It was a time of idealism. The feeling of idealism permeated the country, and there were many people that gave up their lives for this cause. And between them, there was also a divergence, because my father was this flaming communist who believed in agitations and giving fiery speeches and rousing people. And my mother was far more peaceful by nature, and she opted for the Gandhian path. And in those days, Gandhi had a policy of that one person will do satyagraha in the name of many. So she became one of Gandhi's handpicked satyagrahis, the 57th in India, to actually conduct satyagraha in our home village of Dera Baba Nanak in Punjab, which got headlines, etc. And then the British imprisoned her. So it was a time when people did extraordinary things. We lived in Lahore, in these huts, which literally were huts, 3 huts, no electricity, no running water. And it was as much a statement of their lack of money as much as their solidarity with India's poor. And that's where all these leftists and communists would gather, who later became very famous. There was Gyani Zail Singh, who became president. There was Inder Gujral, who became prime minister. There was Harkrishan Surjit, who was major communist. There was Sheikh Abdullah, who was the ruler of Kashmir later. Hafiz Jalandhari, who became the poet laureate of Pakistan. Satish Gujral, who was a very young man at the time. All these people were sort of part of that movement. And even after independence, while others went on to office and getting the rewards of independence, the idealism of my parents didn't change. My mother went on to do refugee work in Kashmir with the refugees. My father wrote the Constitution of Kashmir. And after coming back from Kashmir, they continued. My mother became the editor of a magazine called Social Welfare. My father discovered a spiritual side of him. And my mother went on to become the highest Buddhist nun in the world. And my father became an independent philosopher. Now, I can tell you the broad lines of the story. What I can't share with you is what they went through in this process, and what they sacrificed, and even lost a child. A brother elder to me died as a result of illness and the pressures of the movement. So they were remarkable people who yet, despite their divergences, remained soulmates, despite their religious divergences, remained soulmates in a strange way to the end of their lives. So I can give you broad contours of the story. What I can't do is take you through the raw emotions of going through a struggle like that, which only my book can.
Yes, definitely it does. And in this, Kabir, you were a part of your mother's journey, because she took you and you became a bhikshu, a monk, as a small boy. Could you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, when my mother first discovered Buddhism, she was on a mission to Burma on social welfare. And she had this incredible illumination, like a moment of enlightenment almost, which she describes very poetically in her books. And then she decided to go back to Burma to learn more meditation under Mahasi Sayadaw, who's one of the Burma's living saints, who taught Goenkaji his meditation. And I went along with her. And when I was in Burma, I found out that young boys were also getting ordained in the orders. And I said, I want to be a monk. So I also became a monk for a period of my life, 3 months of my life, walking on the streets with my black lacquer begging bowl, rising in the morning, meditating for hours every day. And truly, it was a great learning experience for me as a young boy to meditate, because the sense of self-awareness that it gives you, you realize that your mind runs riot with you, and you have to control what you think and how you can stay in touch with your thoughts. So it's a magical experience. And my mother and I shared that journey into Buddhism. She in a much more profound way. I, through the conversations that I had with her about Buddhism, which gave me a lifelong interest in philosophy and finding out what the truth is. And there's a chapter in my book called Beaches and Beliefs, where I talk about my spiritual explorations and what I learned from each religion and what conclusions I've come to about the truth of our existence at the end of my journey. You may or may not agree with me, but I put it out there. I said, feel free to embrace me or crucify me, but this is how I see it.
Wonderful. And how old were you when you gone to Burma with her?
Sorry?
How old were you when you went to Burma and went through this experience?
I was 11 years old.
11. So,
10, 11 years old, yeah.
Yes, 11 years old. And within a few years, this same young man who one day wanted to become a monk actually started doing programs on All India Radio and became a Delhi boy who actually went on to interview the Beatles. Wow. That is some coup, and that is some movement from begging in the streets of Burma to becoming this. So, Kabir, that is so fascinating. You have all these different sides to you, but you take them all equally seriously. Tell us about your meeting with the Beatles and what were you doing at All India Radio in those days?
Sometimes adversity makes you do things that lead to things you never imagined. My parents had no money, and I had to work my way through college at St. Stephen's College in Delhi. So radio was one of the ways that I made money, apart from being a tourist guide for tourists in Delhi, because I was a student of history at St. Stephen's, so I knew all about the monuments. So being in All India Radio, being a mad, crazy fan of the Beatles, I heard they were in town. So I thought, I've got to get to them. So I went to my bosses and I said, please give me the tape recorder and the badge so I can interview them. They said, what nonsense, the whole Delhi press corps trying to get there. Who's going to talk to you? I said, give me the tape recorder. What do you have to lose? You have nothing to lose. Just give it to me. So I went there, and then how I got there, how I got to the manager of the Beatles, how I persuaded him to allow me to first he agreed only to be interviewed himself because I put on the pressure saying it's a government demand, so it's a government demand. But when I went to see him, he just wasn't well. So he actually said, oh God, I can't do this now. And he sort of took me from the room and walked me across the entire length of the floor at the Oberoi to the suite at the opposite end. He knocked on the door, Paul McCartney opened it, and he said, do me a favor, boys, give this chap an interview. And there I was, in with the Beatles. It was like Alice in Wonderland. I was in this incredible state of shock almost. And it was wonderful to see them in live, in the flesh. And you'd seen all their pictures, you'd seen all kinds of material on them, but to see them live. And then I had a chat with each one of them, which I won't go into, because of that you must buy the book to find out what I said to them and what they said to me. It was a fascinating chat, and I came out walking on clouds. But that interview actually became the pivotal event in my life, because it was treated so badly by All India Radio, who didn't know what they had, that they not only broadcast it without announcing it, but they taped over my other interview to record other programs. They said, we have no money for tapes. I said, this is broadcasting gold. You could have broadcast this for ages. I could have sold this tape to any broadcaster in the world for a fortune. But didn't matter to them. So I made up my mind. I said, I can't work with these people. This is a mentality I just cannot deal with. So it made me rethink my life, made me leave Delhi, come to Bombay with the hopes of making a very different career, led to advertising, led to theater, led to film, which in turn led to my career abroad. So small things, that the adversity of not having money to pay for my college led me to All India Radio, which led me to that interview, which the disillusionment of which led me to, so small things have enormous effects in life that we don't realize at the time. But the fact of the matter is we must be very careful of what we do, because everything has huge consequences.
Amazing. And of course, once you were in Bombay, you managed to make a breakthrough in theater and acted in a role in which you revealed a little more than most actors do, I believe. Is that correct? Because that is in your book. I mean, you have confessed to it as well.
Well,
Yeah.
in the sense that, see, I did this play called Tughlaq, which is Girish Karnad's first play in English. And Alec Padamsee, the great Alec Padamsee, was my director. And he opened the play. So when the play curtains parted, what the audience saw was me standing with my back to them, arms outstretched, lit from the top light, which every muscle defined on my back, looking as though I was completely nude. And
Wow.
everyone went, oh my God. And that became the talking point of the play. Truth was, I was wearing a langot that covered the front of me, but from the back, I looked completely nude. So this became a sensation. I must say, clarify, the play was a major hit because it was brilliantly written by Girish Karnad and outstandingly directed by Alec Padamsee. I played the title role, I think, really well and got great reviews. But that play then opened the doors to film producers coming to me and asking me to join Bollywood films. I had actually joined advertising to hone my films as a filmmaker because I wanted to be a filmmaker. But when I got these offers, I thought, okay, they'd asked me to join Bollywood. Let's join Bollywood as an actor. Then we'll see about directing. Let me get into the industry. That's a question of recognizing opportunity. I didn't say, no, I'll wait for a directorial offer. You have to recognize opportunity also. That's also one of the lessons of my life, and which I did a number of times. And that, yes, you're right. That play again was another big turning point in my life. And much flowed from that event too.
Yes. And you were already quite, I would say, you had already arrived on the scene in Bombay in a big way and made a great impression on a young woman at that time, whom we got to know as later on as your wife, and of course, a wonderful Odissi dancer called Pratima.
Yes.
And I think it's quite interesting the way she decided, I think, more or less, from what I can make out from your book, that you were going to be in a relationship with her. And frankly, Kabir, I mean, there you were, successful, good looking, working in Lintas, already getting film offers. And I'm sure the Pratima must have been just amongst many girls who would have then wanted, and I'm sure today, wanted to have some kind of a relationship, but that became quite serious. Can you tell us a bit about that? Because she was a free spirit and always was.
She was a free spirit and she had great intelligence, enormous humor. She was the life of the party, quick-witted, beautiful, intelligent, and determined. And when she was determined to make sure that I was part of her life, there was no way I could resist that force of nature, because I had made a rule as a filmmaker in advertising that I was not going to date models, and she was a model, because I didn't want people to think that A, I was taking advantage of being a filmmaker who could give jobs to models and misusing my position, and B, I didn't want girlfriends to put pressure on me to say, no, put me in your ad films. And I just want to be very correct. I want to be taken seriously as a filmmaker, etc. So it was a rule of mine not to date models. She overcame it. How she overcame it, read all about it. And that relationship then evolved into many things, because you have to understand the atmosphere of the 60s. It was a time when the whole age was changing, and there was a sexual revolution happening, a social revolution happening, a music revolution happening, and the Beatles symbolized all that. Flower power, counterculture, people demonstrating on the streets for peace for the first time in history against the Vietnam War. These changes heralded huge changes for us, even in India. And we wanted to liberate ourselves from the rigid conventions of the age. So just our living together became headlines for magazines. They lived together. It's a big scandal in those days. Today, nobody bothers. But the fact of the matter is that we then, it was a relationship that evolved in various ways, and I won't go into the details of that. But it moved from a point where there were things she did and things that I did, etc., that we eventually ended up with an open marriage. Or what it takes to live in an open marriage, how you get there, that's all in my book. But that again was scandalized the times. And eventually that experiment did not work. And it led to my relationship with Parveen Babi. So there was a lot that I gained from Pratima, a lot that we shared together. In some ways, we grew up together. We were both very young. I don't want to say more because there's lots more ground to cover and our time is limited. But it was a relationship that I for all her various aspects, is a person that I remember with great warmth.
Certainly, she had enormous warmth. But I think somewhere, even in your book, which is extremely candid, very frank, and it's very touching because, ultimately there are values, Kabir, no matter what you do, you live in an open relationship. But there are moments which is quite clear in your book that you struggled. You struggled to come to terms with certain things,
Yes,
And
yes.
I was just reading that part again today where suddenly Pratima is pregnant with the second child. And she herself doesn't know whose baby it is. And I was just thinking, my gosh, this is like, in the 60s, in the 70s, it was still scandalous to think like that. As you said, times have changed and couples today come to terms with many things.
Even so.
Yeah, even
but what
so
it is like to be in that situation, to go through that and to go through those emotions, that's the journey that I take the reader through.
Yeah. I think it's very powerfully done, and your own emotions are there, as you do try. I mean, that is also quite clear that both of you do try to keep the marriage intact. However, as you said, you met then another really gorgeous actress, and this is really something which I think a lot of people will also be curious about, because she was also somebody who was towards the end of her life, perhaps unstable, we don't know. I mean, that was the way she was projected. But certainly when Parveen Babi came onto the scene, she was absolutely stunning, absolutely gorgeous.
She was a stunning woman. That's why they put her on the cover of Time magazine as the face of India's rising film scene, which was a remarkable achievement for any Indian. And
what was that relationship like? I mean, that was also fiery, that was also difficult.
That again was a very tumultuous relationship with some extraordinarily beautiful moments, great intensity of love, and yet great traumas that arose from situations which I've described well in my book in depth. And but it was a very difficult relationship because the mental problems that eventually brought her down were evident even at that time, though not as enormously pronounced as they were in later years, but they were there and caused a lot of friction, caused a lot of tension, and how one deals with that kind of situation. I mean, these dramas are happening as I was enjoying the greatest success in Europe, becoming a major star across the continent with my Sandokan series. And the background music of that is this domestic drama that is going on of two people in love and yet conflicted by their own demons, in a sense. It was a magical time, and it was a very difficult time as well. And I tried to write of it as honestly as I could, because I think it's important for people to know what happened. A lot of people, when she left me and came back to India, thought I was responsible for driving her crazy, that her emotional life had upset her greatly. But the truth was completely different, and I wanted to share that with people and say, look, this is what happened. Because at the time, I didn't speak against the vilification of me that was going on, because I knew she needed to resurrect her career. She needed the sympathy. But I did choose to speak out now because it's important to set the record straight.
Kabir, you're also a very open-hearted man, and I think whether it was Fatima, Parveen, or indeed any of your relationships before and after, you have loved these women very deeply, and
Yes.
that is quite clear. Even in this book, your relationship with Parveen Babi, whilst she's suffering, whilst she's being pretty rude to the people in Italy who are building you up, and all the adulation that you're getting at that time, she is obviously resisting some of it because she's not the star there. You are the star, and you see that pretty clearly. But you continue to love her, you continue to support her. And I think that comes out very, very lovingly, I would say, in the book. You do not say a single bad word about her, that is true. But I think that relationship really did leave some very deep scars, because as you said, you were enjoying the success of life at that time. It's probably nobody to really enjoy it with.
You know, I believe in love, and I believe in sharing my life with the woman that I love, which is why I keep getting married. If I just wanted to have a good time, why would I get married? I just go from one woman to another. Why make that commitment? So I like sharing my life. You know, in my profession, you go to these wonderful places. You're fortunate enough to be flown to the best locations, put up in the best hotels, meet the most marvelous people. It's a very lonely journey if you come back to the hotel room and it's all alone and you have no one to share that with. So I like sharing that. And, you know, therefore, I love with great depth. And in the end, if it doesn't work out for whatever reasons, you move on. But the search for that love and companionship continues. And fortunately, I have found that finally with my wife, Parveen Dosanjh, who has given me so much and fulfilled me as a man in a way that I wanted to be fulfilled emotionally, physically, in terms of the love and caring and sharing that we have. So Parveen is the perfect culmination to that search that took me through 3 other marriages and 3 divorces.
Right. To get back briefly to the point when we were talking about Italy and your great success, Sanduka. Now tell us about that, because you were actually a breakthrough actor much before many other actors, or actually barely anyone had made it big abroad in Europe or anywhere else. You had already become a household name in Italy. That is really a big thing. And
Yes.
tell me, didn't you ever feel that this was such a humongous success that should be celebrated more even in India, though of course it was in a big way in Italy?
The Italian success was extraordinary. It was like that strange fact that here I was like a mad fan of the Beatles, and 10 years later, I was getting the same kind of adulation in Europe and in Italy. So it was a huge achievement. And those days, you know, it wasn't the world of today. There was no email, there was no internet. Telephone calls you had to book on long distance calls, and operators would get back to you 4 hours later and interrupt you every 3 hours, 3 minutes, saying, "Want to continue, sir? Want to continue, sir?" So communication was very difficult, and really, with all that happening and being unprepared for the kind of success that I achieved. I didn't hire PR agencies in India. We didn't have PR agencies in India. You had a few friendly journalists that put out a few stories, but it became a huge story. It should have in India, but people in the business knew about it. And in time, the word percolated back to India. Kabir has achieved major stardom in Italy. But then again, one generation knew it, the next generation forgot it. And it was important for me to tell that story so that every generation, even today's generation, even the young techies and professionals today, know what happened then. In fact, my book is dedicated to young techies and young professionals. That's the dedication of my book, because they are the ones for whom I've also written the story. So they can learn from my life, learn how I got there, avoid the mistakes that I made, and know what it is to lead a life that is thrilling, heartbreaking, wondrous in some ways, full of great truths, full of great pain. Because life is not all ha 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 he he, you know. It's a very mixed journey, and I've seen great extremes of success and downfall in my life, and to live that, suffer that, and resurrect yourself from the depths. That's the story of my life. It's the story of my making, unmaking, and remaking.
Absolutely. So Sandokan itself, what was it in the character that appealed to you as well? Because you kept playing him for quite a number of years. And the second part of this is also that, which brings us back to Parveen, is she was actually going to star in Sandokan opposite you. Am I correct? I mean, she was going to play the lead. That would have been phenomenal. So can you just answer both of these? That what was it that appealed to you? What happened? Why did she not go through with it?
You know, the role of Sandokan was an iconic role because the role, Emilio Salgari, who wrote the original novels of Sandokan, made Sandokan into an iconic figure in Italy even before I played the role. But they had made films on Sandokan before me, which had not succeeded. This worked because of the vision of the director, Sergio Solima, the music, the atmosphere. A zillion things conspired to make it a huge hit. And strangely, there was an amazing parallel between the story of Sandokan and my parents, because both my father fell in love with an English girl, as did Sandokan. Both fought for the freedom of their countries, as did my mother and father. Both had this great idealism of the human spirit, saying that colonialism, human exploitation is wrong, and we must fight for the dignity of man and the upliftment of the poor. Those parallels existed. So when I played the role of Sandokan, I felt that affinity with which I'd grown up, that those values that I'd grown up with, saying this is what human existence is about and should be fought for in our lives if it's missing. So that was a very deep experience for me. Regarding Parveen, when I decided to leave India and end my career in Bollywood, and I then lived outside India for 25 years, which is why I didn't have a huge Bollywood career. I decided that I was going to leave, and Parveen decided to come with me. I got her the lead role in the next Sandokan series. Then, for reasons I've explained in my book, she was lured back to India and left me. Again, I'm not going to give away the whole book by telling you all that happened, but had she done that film, I think it would have been very good for her. And certainly the film suffered to some degree because of her absence. But the magic and myths of Sandokan continues. Even today, 40 years after the event, everyone from grandmothers to grandchildren know me in Italy. I've become a kind of iconic figure of sorts because that's what Sandokan was. And I happened to play the role of Sandokan. And yes, it was certainly one of the big highs of my life and a tremendous achievement for a middle-class boy from Delhi to go on and become such a huge star in Europe.
You became a legend, absolutely. And then, of course, you did try out your wings, as it were, Hollywood. But I think that turned out to be a little bit of disheartening experience for you, because you did not actually find the kind of roles that you could have played, or which would have excited you. I mean, you did do some Bond films, I mean, or one or two roles like that, but was it something that you had aspired for, that you would then not return, as you said, to India? You could possibly have a Hollywood career as well.
I think every actor acting in commercial cinema, even perhaps in art cinema, somewhere in the back of their mind, they want to go to Hollywood and see if they can succeed. I had that opportunity. So I thought, okay, I'm going to push the envelope. I'm going to go to Hollywood and see what happens. Now, the problem in those days in Hollywood was that diversity wasn't an issue then. Including people of other nationalities, races, wasn't an issue. So they weren't writing roles for Indians or Asians, for that matter. And when they did, they had no hesitation in taking a white actor and painting him brown and saying, you do the role. So it was very hard. And I adjusted for that by being able to play other foreign roles in Hollywood. And I did a number of television series there. And certainly I have to thank Hollywood for giving me fame far beyond Europe, both with the Bond film, Octopussy, where I played the villain opposite Roger Moore, as well as The Bold and Beautiful, which is watched by hundreds of millions of people each day. And I was on that series for almost a year. So it gave me a fan base across the world where people write to you in droves and want autographs and pictures and invite you to their conventions, invite you to their towns, invite you for celebrations. It extended my popularity as an actor globally. So I have to thank Hollywood for that. That's what they gave me. And yes, there was difficult times. Yes, I came to the point of bankruptcy in Hollywood at the end, which I've explained in my book. And it's very humiliating to know what a celebrity feels like to go bankrupt, read my book. But how you endure that, how you overcome that, how you rise from the ashes and resurrect your life, that's my story.
I think it's inspirational. And of course, you did get married again, Kabir, while you were in Hollywood, and have now a lovely son from that marriage, Adam. So yes. I think there is something to say about everything in life, that there are ups and downs. And as you said, I mean, to be in a Bond film is a great thing. To be in Bold and Beautiful is amazing. But it was not, I think, satisfying for you as an actor, possibly. And you did also then try, I think, the UK. You were also briefly in Britain, for various, for theatrical purposes there. And you did act in, which I wish I had seen it. I always regret the Far Pavilions, that I was in London at that time, but I missed it, unfortunately. How did you feel acting in that? Back on stage, in theater, And of course, you had got married again by then to Nikki Bedi, the delightful, the lovely Nikki Bedi. Yes.
Nikki Bedi, who's got a wonderful career in radio right now and does things on television too. And we're still the best of friends, as I am with all my ex-wives. Which is no small achievement, as any divorced man will tell you, to remain friends with them. But I've always loved theatre. The reason I don't do more theatre, haven't done more theatre, is that with the lifestyle you adopt as a film star, theatre doesn't really pay the bills. And that's the hard part. And just to hark back to Hollywood, it's not that I didn't have major accomplishments in terms of landmark films like the James Bond film and The Bold and Beautiful. It's the gaps in between that kill actors. The bills are regular, the work is irregular. That's what kills you. And that's what eventually forced me then to come back to England and restart my life. The thrill of being on the stage in the Far Pavilions, in this incredible theater which seated 1,600 people, with live orchestra playing, with balconies and seats of velvet. It was like a dream for an actor to perform in the West End of London. And as I mentioned in my book, that role was also sweet revenge for the fact that I was supposed to play the same role in the first HBO miniseries when it happened. But I couldn't do it because the Bond film overshot and they wouldn't wait for me, and they gave the role to Omar Sharif. So I had I had to wait many decades before I could play the same role on the West End. And Omar Sharif and I have this wonderful relationship because in the same way that he took a role from me, later I took a role from him because there was the film called Ashanti where I was opposite Michael Caine. And he was cast in that role originally of his the companion of Michael Caine. But it was to be shot in Israel. And as an Egyptian actor, he couldn't shoot in Israel. So he said, they will kill me. I cannot do this. So he didn't do the role, and I got the role. He played a guest role in the film, which was shot in Italy. So Omar and I have done 3 films in our careers together, and I really admired him because Omar Sharif was the trailblazer. He was the first Asian to make a major mark in Hollywood. And I might have been the first Bollywood actor that went from Bollywood and made a career in Hollywood. But I certainly didn't have the same impact as Omar Sharif in Hollywood. Yet we were good friends and remained good friends to the end of his days.
I think you've met some amazing people, including, I think, Audrey Hepburn, Gina Lollobrigida, and it's all there in your book, which is fantastic.
Federico Fellini is wonderful, yeah.
Yes, but before we turn to the audience, I think we just have time for perhaps 1 or 2 more questions. There are 2 which I would like to ask you, and perhaps you could comment on that. One is, of course, your career in India. Now, you've always, you never liked singing songs and running around trees.
I refused to be a singing, dancing star, that's true.
Yeah. So as a result, I think your roles became a little limited as a hero. But you did manage to do quite a number of films. And how would you say your career was in India? That's one question. And the other one is slightly, well, difficult, I'm sure, which is, we'll come to that later. But let's just talk about your career in India.
You know, it's true that my Bollywood career is not as illustrious as my career was in Europe, or even for that matter in America. This is largely for 2 reasons. One is that I wasn't here. 25 years of my life was spent outside India. My most productive and creative years, when I looked my best, etc., I was out the country. But there's many things I have to thank Bollywood for. Firstly, they made me into a professional film actor. If I hadn't been a professional film actor in Bollywood, the Italians would not have found me. Because when they came to Bombay looking to find the next Sandokan as part of an Asian tour, they were asking for a tall, bearded, well-built actor, athletic. And my name was mentioned because I was a Bollywood actor. So I have to thank Bollywood for that. And Bollywood made me a name across many parts of India, which is no small achievement. I have to thank Bollywood for that. And then Bollywood also rescued me at a time when I was in trouble in the late 80s, when Rakesh Roshan called me when I was shooting with Tom Selleck in Hawaii for Magnum PI, and offered me the role in Khoon Bhari Maang with Rekha, which absolutely blew me away and became my biggest Bollywood hit ever. So Bollywood never abandoned me in that sense. They called me back for my greatest hit. And I've done some wonderful films like Mohenjo-daro with Hrithik Roshan, and worked with some great stars like Akshay Kumar and Shah Rukh Khan. It's absolutely an experience of a lifetime for many people just to do that. And Bollywood has also given that to me. So my career spans 3 continents, 3 film industries, and I have enjoyed the journey and suffered many bumps along the way. But that's life, you know, and I've enjoyed the whole process. And Bollywood has certainly been part of my journey. And I'm back in India because this is where I always wanted to be. And I absolutely enjoyed coming back to India because I never intended to stay abroad all my life. I was very clear on that from the day I left India. This is where my journey began, and this is where it will end, and the rest of it is a deeply human story that will make you laugh, it'll make you cry, it'll make you, it'll give you heartaches, it'll give you joy. I have much to thank Bollywood for also.
Yes, and I'm sure they have lots to offer you still, Kabir.
I hope so.
You have lots. Yeah, I'm sure they're just writing up all the roles.
My motto in life, Kishwar, is the best is yet to come. So you never know where that comes from, and you know, at one level I became a debut author at 75. So you never know where the next sun will shine from.
Yes, and as you say, it last so we know that there's lots more to come, and I think I'll have to end there because our host is back, and I'm sure there's some questions from the audience. Yes, please do. I'm handing over to you now, Vijay.
Is there a quick question that you had one more question, Kishwar?
Sorry?
Did you have one more question?
I did actually, which was, talking about Kabir's family a little more, because there are a few things which I thought we should discuss in terms of, which are now, in fact, huge issues in India, because nobody talks about mental health. But he has actually been associated with two people very closely that he has seen. One, of course, was Praveen Babi, and the other was his son, whom he lost very tragically. And I think both, if I'm correct, suffered from schizophrenia. So I wanted him to say a little bit on this. It must have been a very difficult time for him, and it is there in his book. But would you like to tell us a little bit about your son, Siddharth?
Kishwar, I don't want to oversimplify this, because, living with a person who is suffering from mental health problems, in this case, in both cases, forms of schizophrenia, is not easy. And the reason I wrote my story was also to not only look at what happens to the person, but also to make people understand there's not just the afflicted person that is suffering. The caregivers suffer too. The caregivers, whether it's family, friends, spouses, whoever it is, it takes an enormous toll on them. And there has to be far greater understanding of them and far less stigmatization of the afflicted. This was very important to me. There's a whole chapter I've written on my son, and all that led to his suicide. And it's something I had to dig deep, because I had to relive the whole experience. But I think it's very important for me to share that, because what a human being goes through when his son commits suicide is something that it's indescribable, but I tried to describe it in the best way I could, so people can see what happens in situations like that. And what more can I say? It was a tragedy. There's no greater pain than a parent losing a child. And he was a brilliant boy on the edge of an amazing career in technology, being a graduate of Carnegie Mellon University. But all those things are explored in my book. I don't want to oversimplify them by talking here.
Right.
But let me just say these are very important experiences to know and to understand. So you see people with these afflictions in a different way. And more importantly, give more empathy to the caregivers that give up so much of their lives looking after such people.
Right. I think that empathy and sympathy comes across in also some of the charities that you head, and I believe that you champion a charity which has to do with Hyderabad and Telangana Care and Share. It's between Italy and India. Would you like to comment on that?
I've always done everything I can to promote understanding between India and Italy. And there's an Italian charity into which I put a lot of work called Care and Share Italia. And what they do is they take children from the slums in Andhra, Telangana, Hyderabad, Vijayawada, and pick them up, house them, feed them, clothe them, look after them from kindergarten to university. And I've seen the work they've done. I've been to their centers. It is extraordinary. And I've done a lot of, I've done a tour in Italy for fundraising, many appeals to raise money for this, because I think what they're doing is extraordinary. The other charity that I'm involved in is Sight Savers, which has given sight to millions of people in India, in 108 districts of India. And these are two charities that I care for, or want to say care for, what I've given the most of my time to, because you can't give your time to all the worthy charities. And I've chosen these two to focus on. So I have many links in Hyderabad. Also, I've done Telugu films. I've done films with Balakrishna called Gautami Putra Shatakarani, another film called Paisa Vasool, short films at the Ramoji Studios. So I have many links with Hyderabad.
Great. So as they say, you're world famous in Hyderabad too. And
I hope to be.
And you probably speak fluent Italian and Telugu as well.
No, I don't speak Telugu. I have to do that phonetically, but I'm pretty good at it. Yes.
Right. No, I think you're good to find a lot of more admirers and readers who would love to go through your book, and I'm sure it'll be a super success. So,
thank you so much,
any
Keshwa.
questions? Yes. No, it was lovely speaking to you. But
for me to speak to an author as accomplished as you is a very special honor, and thank you for the wonderful questions you've asked me. And because, the answers I give depends on the questions you ask, and you asked some very seminal questions, and I thank you for allowing me to share those parts of me through the questions you've asked. And I hope that our interaction here leads to more people learning about my book, learning about me, and also learning the lessons. And learning the lessons that are implicit in my book. My book is not a preachy book. You must do this, you must do that. That's a separate kind of self-help book. But there are many lessons in my book that are implicit, which people that want to see or want to get those lessons will get them, will understand them. Because it's there. If you are sensitive, if you're intelligent, you'll understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, thank you very much. And there is also, you mentioned Telugu and Italian. Telugu is also called the Italian of the East.
Right. No, it's
so there is
fantastic culture.
Yeah.
Fantastic culture. And as a student of history, I've always admired the great South Indian dynasties that are so little talked about in the North, or even known. And when I did Gautami Putra Shatakarani, it reminded me of the immense tradition of the Satavahana kingdoms.
Yeah.
And I was very proud to be in that film, even though I played the villain against Balakrishna. But still, it was history, and I was proud to be part of the history of Andhra.
Yeah, I think the first question that I would like to take up is Babette Plitz from Germany, asking, are there any films you regret having been part of? Were there any films that you regretted?
I'm familiar with Babette because she follows me on Twitter and we interact from time to time. Yes, Babette, there are films that I regret. There are times I had to do films just for the money. There are times I did films where I was told the role is one thing and it turned out to be another, because in Bollywood sometimes they don't give you scripts, they narrate the role and then things change along the way. There are many regrets I have in life with the hindsight of wisdom of today. I know there are things I could have done differently, handled certain things differently. But it's okay to have regrets. What is not okay is to let them run your life. Because at the end of the day, we have jobs to do, families to raise, dreams to fulfill, and we have to look beyond and think of the future and think of all the wondrous possibilities in life rather than dwell on regrets. All those things are there, they're part of life. What defines your mind and your spirit is what you choose to focus on and what you put your energy and time into, which is, according to me, central to making your life more worthwhile, fulfilling, and evolving as a person.
I think the next two questions actually are similar in this, because both of them are asking about whether my colleague at HLF, Amita Desai, is asking, do you still feel connected to your spiritual experience as a young boy? And similarly, Sudha is also asking your journey from being a monk to be a film star, and that connection, whether you still feel, is there a place in your life for spirituality, and how do you connect with that part?
I think the experience of being a Buddhist monk. Sorry, give me a second. My earphone's fallen.
Yeah.
Fine. I think the experience of being a Buddhist monk has remained with me all my life. The meditation that I learned and practiced has remained with me in many ways throughout the years. It has seen me through some of my biggest crises in life. It has helped me understand even the heights of my success, that these things are ephemeral. Don't define yourself by them. Don't think that this will go on forever. That understanding you get because of not only the spiritual meditation that I did, but also the spiritual nature of my parents, who were not attached to material things. That their gains and their values were something different. So those things have always remained with me. Moving from being a monk to being a big star, I always say there are many parts of ourselves. There are many parts of ourselves. There's the creative self, there's a spiritual self, there is a aspirational self, there is a self that's lazy, there's a self that's self-destructive. There's so many things that we have within us. And what makes us is the balance that we give all these parts of ourselves. And what we become is that part of ourselves that we make the prime minister of these different ministers within us. That's the journey and choices that we have to make. And my feeling is that at the end of the day, sometimes I put the wrong people as prime ministers, but what got me through the whole process and took me through this wondrous journey on 3 continents is the fact that your inner self remains uncorrupted.
I think that in a way also connects to the next 2 questions that we have. Nirupama Rastogi, who incidentally recalls your performance at the Hyderabad Public School in the play Tughlaq. And it seems you performed at the Hyderabad Public School. And Nirupama Rastogi and Madhavi Menon are both asking a similar question about how do you maintain your composure, particularly when there is so much negative image that is being projected in the media or all kinds of things. So how do you retain your composure, and how do you?
I just want to clarify. I don't remember performing at the Tughlaq in Hyderabad. We traveled with it, but I didn't come to Hyderabad. I'm pretty sure of that. But to answer the larger question, how do I retain my composure? I don't know. When you are, when you reach a certain level of stardom and you're a public figure, you know that there's going to be flack from all over. And you cannot afford to take everything too seriously. You have to be a little thick-skinned and not take everything personally. It comes with the territory. That's part of the job. And I feel that it's important to realize that you are who you are. You're not defined by people's opinions, and that somewhere in time the truth will come out. That's what I believed. Actually, many of the truths didn't come out. My book has brought many of those truths out, which perhaps needed to be told.
Yeah.
But I think my inner calm comes from my mother, who was one of the most compassionate people that I know. It comes from my meditation, and it comes from my sense of not being defined by the opinions of other people, but being sure of who I am.
I think that also, in a way, answers the question that Maria is asking about playing negative roles. And she particularly mentions your role in the Bond film. And you just mentioned Gautami Putra Shatakarni, where you play the villain. So in a way, I suppose your role doesn't really define the actor that you are.
It does, but that's called acting. You're paid to act bad, and you act bad as best as you can. Be the best baddie there is if you're going to play a baddie.
Yeah. And one of the things that Priyanka Tripathi is asking, beyond your memoir, what do you plan to do next, particularly writing? And I think, again, you provide an answer to this in the book, where you say there are more stories. And this is, so in a way, I think, can we look forward to a sequel? I mean, there are...
Well, every creative person is full of creative ideas. So there's all kinds of creative ideas swirling within me. I'm making notes, and there's a process that I learned in advertising, which is called brainstorming. You just keep writing ideas down without any filters, without any no, just put them all down. And at the end of that whole process, you assimilate them all, and out of that comes something. What that something is, I don't know. But ideas are being put down. Something will be written in the future. But for now, my biggest challenge is getting my book read by the greatest number of people in the middle of a raging pandemic. I feel greatly for the suffering that people have gone through, and I share that with them. But at the same time, I've told my story, and I believe that it will be a great companion for them at any time in their lives. And the sooner they read it, the more I'll be grateful.
Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, the book itself also has had a wonderful journey so far. The cover was released by Salman Khan, and the book was released by Priyanka Chopra. And yeah, thank you so much.
Let me hold up the book as well.
Yes.
There you go.
That's right.
Yes. And the book has been receiving wonderful reviews also. And the support that you have received from the film world is also remarkable. And of course, it's an acknowledgement of your stature as a star across 3 continents. And thank you very much for spending your evening with us. And we are really honored and privileged to have you with us this evening.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Professor Vijay. I'm most grateful that you did. And I thank Kishwa for wonderful questions. Thank you, Kishwa.
And thank you very much. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of this evening's conversation with Kabir Bedi, and we will see you again at another session of HLF Online. Thank you very much. And once again, we are grateful to you for spending your time with us. Kishwar and Kabir, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.